As Lakshmi said, today's session is on psychosocial aspects. This is one of the major aspects in palliative care. So day by day, as nurses, we are facing lot of psychosocial issues while we talk to the patients. So we don't know how to manage the psychosocial issues and all. So the one of the major role of psychosocial issues that will be handled by medical social workers. So this session will be taken by Reshma. She's she's a staff nurse and a medical social worker. Now she is working as a senior medical social worker in Trivandrum Institute of Palliative Science. So she's here. Welcome, Reshma. Over to you.
Thank you, Sister Shiva ma'am, for your kind introduction. A very good afternoon to all. As you know, till all of your sections would talk to you about the physical aspects, pain management, and various other topics which related to physical comfort of the patient. So today we are only focusing on the psychosocial aspects of care, which is thoroughly as important as any kind of pain management and other physical aspects, right? So normally we are set aside these psychosocial aspects in hospitals due to our busy schedules. As she told, I was worked. I have different kind of experience like a staff nurse. I was working in a especially in surgical intensive care unit, and I know how the patients are bearing the pain. Thereafter, now I'm working here in palliative care as a medical social worker. So here, what would attracted me here? We are approaching health here in all four aspects. Basically, we are decline all other aspects, respect the physical aspects. As we said, we are saying in our health, which is a physical, psychological, mental, and emotional well-being of a person. But unfortunately, we are set aside all other aspects due to our busy schedules in our OPDs as well as in hospital settings. It is not at all because of our mistakes, but what we are taught like to manage always with provide physical comfort at maximum to our patients, right? So I think you have some voice disturbance from.
I request all to stay muted and not to disturb the classes.
I think we all gone through. You are familiar with the World Health Organization palliative care definition, which is an approach that improves the quality of life of patients and families, those who are facing various problems associated with life-threatening illness. And when we are talking about life-threatening, it is not only something that limits the length of their life. It is also something that threatens the quality of life. We cannot say life-threatening illness in the sense it's just an end of life, or it is about a very serious conditions like cancer or any other kind. So imagine a patient who met with a road traffic accident and admitted in a hospital, and he was diagnosed as spinal cord. He's having spinal cord injury. What we used to do, we will fix the spine with any metal rods and send them back to the home. And we are just advising them come back after 3 weeks for catheterization changes and all. And we will review for maximum for 1 month or 3 weeks. We are giving such advices and just leave out them from the hospital. This patient who, after this acute management, when they are going to their home, so how they will manage their further life? Can you imagine, like suddenly patient who, a person who cannot able to do his whole activity of daily living without any other support? They may have developed other symptoms like UTI, recurrent UTI, neuropathic pain, at most bed sore. At 4 stages of bed sore may happen. So, and urinary retention, lot of problems will suffer, even though we are telling you can come after 3 weeks review. They don't even want to manage these all things in their home without any external support. And the person who is taking care of them in the family also will face the same problem. Suddenly they want to take care of a person as well. They can't, maybe they can't shift that patient from the bed to the chair, and reverse also. So that is a condition we can call as life threatening. Okay, so that what would I want to add in that. And this is a prevention and a relief of suffering by means of early identification and assessment and treatment of pain and other problems, which is physical, psychosocial, and the spiritual one. So, could you please read a scenario which I am giving there? Can you please read that? So here is a case of a 44-year-old female, Mrs. D, who has been diagnosed with juvenile diabetic mellitus. During the home visit for the registration, she has severe pain due to ulcer of both the lower limbs, blurred vision, bleeding, and foul smell from the wounds. She looked very anxious and scared, and she had no idea about palliative care because sometimes there is a myth which is persisting in the society that, oh, palliative care is, that means her life is almost going to be end, or some myth is happening like that. So when a team approaching there, she has no idea about why this palliative care team approached us. She lives with her son who is 11-year-old. Her husband has left her after the diagnosis, and she had lost sensation in her lower limb. She was working as a housemaid before, and she started to losing her eyesight. Her activity of daily living was very limited due to ulcer and blurred vision. She lives in a small hut made of wooden planks attached around, and there is no point of privacy inside of that house because whatever happening in the house can easily visible from a person who is standing outside. They don't even have a bathroom and no flooring is done. The patient sleeps on a tarpaulin sheet laid down on normal ground. So this is a scenario which is a different experience, because mostly we are seeing a patient in hospice and other mostly CA cases. So can you just tell me what are the important areas you are going to be assessed and identify your priority interventions for this patient? Just have a look in that, and
You can chat your answers.
okay. Anyway, we can come back to that point. So here we are going to see this patient from all aspects, including physical, spiritual, psychological, and social. That we already mentioned that the patient having severe pain. So we are approaching a patient here in the concept of total pain. So What is total pain? It is a concept of approaching pain through all these four aspects, such as physical, spiritual, psychological, and the social. And you can see one circle is overlapping the other, and these four are colliding each other. So that means the total pain reported by a patient may be compounded by all these four factors. It is maybe because of their life circumstances or due to their current situations. Okay. So why psychosocial care is important? Because if a person who lives with a life-limiting or life-threatening illness or aware of approaching death poses unique stresses and challenges in their life. A serious illness disrupts individuals' thought and feelings, maybe the relationships with the others, social and spiritual supports that may also lose, and the financial stability. So all these things have to be noted, and therefore a professional hand should be there for taking the assessment criteria. So this is assessment, which is an exploration process of gathering information about a person, how we are exploring things. So that exploration will happen by collecting all the informations available about that patient. The selection of goals and the interventions depends largely on what is being assessed. And we will go detailedly into that. So what is our aim is to identify the problem areas which are resulted from that illness that may influence the well-being of patient and the family members. So how we can identify these problems? See, this assessment, when we are identifying the psychosocial need of a patient, it may vary over the period of course of illness, because the assessment is an ongoing process and the patient's needs may changes at any point of time. So how we are doing all this? Through purposeful observation and purposeful conversation, we are collecting information from the patient or the person who is taking care of them. And the sources of information may be the patient itself, the caregiver, and some collateral sources such as friends, relatives, neighbors, local bodies, etc. Because sometimes we may, if sometimes in our OPDs, we may get patient is comes with their friends or sometimes with their neighbors, and they have lost all their relationship with the family members. So they are also very important to collect all these informations. So what are the important areas to be assessed from the point of view of total pain? And this assessment involves the patient overview, insight, family overview, socio-economic overview, psychological overview, spiritual overview, psychosocial overview, interventions, and plan. And we can detailedly go through all of these variables. The first one is a patient overview, which involves the basic demographic details such as their age, name, and the gender, their occupation before and after illness. So, as I told, we are giving some purposeful conversation. So, when we are asking about their occupation before and after illness, we may able to understand their current situation. Is anyone is there in the family who is taking care of their financial and the medical needs, and their present socio-economic condition also. With a very started conversation itself, we may get an idea about how the family is now managing with their current situation. Next one is the primary caregiver and the relation. Sometimes, as I told, neighbor who is taking care of that patient and relatives are abandoned the patient. So there is a primary caregiver who is a neighbor only. That means they lost all kind of relationship with the family members. So indirectly, we may get all these informations through our conversations. In the first visit or the first time when we are seeing a patient itself, we may get these kind of details through some indirect but the relevant questions like this. Next one is the insight. It is very important in palliative care to understand about the present insight about the patient, about their disease condition. Then only we can move forward with our plan of care. So we should ask about the diagnosis, prognosis, and their understanding about palliative care. So these insight should be asked indirectly. That means how long you are suffering this disease condition, or what do you think about disease? What doctors you are told to you, or what family members are thinking about your condition. Lot of questions we can ask indirectly to understand about their diagnosis. Okay, I think all these chats you can get an idea once the communication through the communication sessions in palliative care. You can understand how these questions can be helpful to understand the insight of the patient about their disease condition, prognosis, and the palliative care. So we should get information from the patient as well as from the primary caregiver as well as the family members. Also, we should take all these kinds of informations. Next one is the family overview, which involves a genogram, family dynamics and the supporting system, history of illnesses in the family. I think you all familiar with the genogram, which is already is there in our curriculum. So genogram, otherwise we can call it as family tree. According to Murray-Baum, it is a graphical representation of person's family over at least 3 generations, which tell us about the structure, dynamic, strengths, and resources. And through this snapshot of this genogram itself, we came to understand about their family condition. And the type of information which involves the name, age, education, occupational profile, and the emotional relationship. So these are some legends which is usually using internationally, and this is you can search it in Google. So these are some international symbols. For male, it is square; female, round. Married, separated, divorced, it is two doubled slash, and some other signs you can see here. And some emotional relationship we can present like playing, friendship, what for friendship, intimacy, some hostile, some violence, and emotional abuse. So these are some legends which we are usually using in the genograms, neglect and abuse. So this is based on our case scenario. This is genogram, pictorial representation, and we should include their age, as I told, their name and their occupation generally, and at least 2 or 3 generation extended genogram is available. Means it will be very great for us to understand about their family as much. So we always advise to take at least 2 generation because you can see the D is our patient and the husband F, who was a mason, and they are not legally separated, but they are living separately, and they have a standard son who is 16-year-old, and F having another sibling who is 49-year-old and living alone. So this is a picture representation, and I will show you another example from a case sheet, which is not related to our case scenario, but for your better understanding, all these signs are clearly visible here. Just go through that. Too fast.
Sister Regina, we have a radio chat. Like we will be moving slow now. Should we repeat anything presented before to have more clarity? Sister Regina, can you unmute yourself and speak?
Yeah, hello. Yes, please. When she got to the genogram, yes, I couldn't capture everything because it was too quick. Talking about the different types of representations, how you represent the sexes, the emotional abuse aspect, and all that. If she could please go back.
Oh, okay, Regina, we can. So these are the legends
Yes.
which we normally using, and it is internationally accepted. You can note it. So male, we usually use square, female, and the marriage, which is knotted like a normal line. So separated, we are using a slash, which is only one, which is showing they are separated but not legally. And divorced with the two slotted slash, that means legally they got divorced. And some other signs for twins, identical twins, abortion, miscarriage, stillbirth, pregnancy, foster child, and adopted child. So you can easily find it from the Google. A lot of signs are there, and for medical diagnosis and symptoms also, for mentally retardation or some congenital deformities. A lot of signs are available, internationally accepted available signs in Google. So we can use all these evidence-based things in our genogram. So what I want to suggest you, at least take 2 or 3 extended genogram, which is very helpful for getting all the idea about the family. So these are some signs for using us for in emotional relationship. So you can go through that. So we are explained about the genogram with all the symbolic representations and the legends which is using with their emotional relationship, as well as what are the family members. Some demographic details also we are including in that, their name, their age, and currently what they are doing. So when we can see this, when quickly seeing this genogram, we can understand about the families current relationship with others, and who all are supporting. And also as like the next, as like the genogram, the other supporting system identification is through an ICOMA, which is a pictorial representation of patient and family in a social environment, the relationship with the larger society. That means any kind of social support system is available for this patient or the family, whether any other kinds of other NGOs is supporting, or they have any religious beliefs or any religious system or the association organization who are helping them, that we can easily tackle with the representation of ICOMA. All over, it is a snapshot view of important interactions of patient family with other systems such as some extended families, the individuals, the organizations, and the association, etc. So Maybe you have some doubt that how we could ask these all questions when we are seeing a patient at first visit. So as I told you earlier, through that purposeful conversations only we could get all these kinds of informations that about we can ask like do you get any kind of support from your friends? How oftenly friends are visiting you? Or what about your relationship with the neighbors? Is they are very friendly? Or are you able to talk with your neighbors now also? Are you missing your workplace? Or any kind of organization is supporting you? So a lot of questions we can ask like, and any other health services is available, is they are able to transfer to the healthcare access. So these questions we can ask, and we can identify all these things, and we means sometimes we can ask these purposeful questions like what is your religious beliefs, whether so are you able to go to your church or temple, or are you missing that, or what kind of beliefs do you have? So a lot of these kind of questions may help you tackle all these information. So then you can picturize it later like this. That means here the family is helpful to get access to school. That means the family, maybe some children of that family is able to go school, even the family struggling with any financial problem, or due to this illness related suffering also persists, but they are able, the children is able to go to schools usually. And the health services, whether any other palliative care team approaches or any primary health center is available near to that family, or any hospitals is nearby to that family, and is they are able to transport the patient from home to the healthcare access. And extended family in the sense the relatives or the other siblings which are is there any kind of communication is happening between the family, if they are supporting the family physically or financially. So these are just represented here. And shall we move to the next slide? Are you clear about this? If any questions, please keep it in the chat box. Next is the social economic overview, which is very, very important in our psychosocial aspects as well as in palliative care approach. That means the patient is getting adequate food, clothing, and shelter. Even they are managing, or if they are availing with all the basic amenities or not. Then breadwinner who controls the finance, what is the source of income and debts, social support such as government schemes, local finance support, then education of the children. So social overview is always very important to understand about the current life circumstances that family goes to. Mainly, this is one of the main problem of the total pain experiencing by a patient. Okay. Next one is a psychological overview, such as psychological distress, what the patient is experiencing, emotional support, anticipatory grief, and coping mechanism. For the first time of visit, you can identify, you have doubt, maybe you have doubt regarding how we can tackle all these problems in our first visit, in our OP schedules, or when we are seeing a patient. So it is, moreover, we can do it with first visit, we can do somewhat, but if we should understand, we are thinking that it is not adequate, and we need to more identifying more about that patient, we need to arrange more sessions. The psychological overview involves the what kind of distress that patient is feeling now. Is it because of their present illness-related suffering, or any other things which is worrying that patient? Basically, we can understand what are the concerns the patient expressing and the worries also. So we can identify their worries and concerns, then we can give the emotional support. And who are giving the emotional support from the family, and what is the anticipate any kind of grief is there or not. So obviously there may be a lot of pain, emotional pain that the patient suffering, because as we know, when we are also feeling any fever or any kind of distress physically, if we are not fit for anything, suddenly we also get emotional trauma, right? So same thing will be happens, and the patient is hearing from someone outside that, oh, that patient is having only 2 more months there, and he may be in the hospital, and hearing from someone who is standing outside, we have done all with our treatments and nothing is left. If that kind of words may be, if hearing by a patient or a person, what kind of thoughts may they may cross across. So they have a lot of concerns and worries in their mind, and they may be thinking about their spouse and the children, what kind of things will happen in their life future, and how their education, how they will go without me, lot of things. And that anticipatory grief maybe will happen, not only patient and the family members also will feel the same kind of grief. And the coping mechanism, we can ask them how you are dealing with your family, or how how now what are the relation with your family members right now. Is are you able to talk with all your friends as before? So how they are coping, or what their daily activities, is they are doing any kind of hobbies that they are doing previously, and what are their interesting subjects through. So a lot of things will comes into that, and we can tackle all how they are coping with that. Next is the spiritual assessments, which is very important area, and not that we cannot do it within a first kind of visit, or we should develop a rapport with them. Perhaps then only we can assess the spiritual connection with spiritual aspects, such as um, the connection, meaning and joy, their strength and comfort, their hope and concerns. And these questions, like, just for your understanding, I just added this for your understanding. Um, that means in the connection, we can ask like, who are the persons or communities you like to support? What role do they have in your care? Do you have an image of power greater than yourself? Have your life situations now affected your feelings about yourself, your faith, or your relationships? Then meaning and joy. See, simply we are saying that spiritual assessment, oh, it's related to God, whether they have faith or related to God, or they have any trust in God. It is not such as, but more variables are there, and we can ask questions like this, and we will get extraordinary replies from the patients, which is useful for which is very helpful to tackle a lot of their psychological problems. And maybe they are having some um, issues, or which is not at, they have some great wishes, may not till may not happen, but we can ask them whether any kind of wishes. Should not ask like what is your last wish or something like that. So indirectly we can get some idea about what they are exactly, what their meaning of life and joy, what we could help them to get improving in that. So what has been the most important in your life? Who are the person thankful for you? And which person you are liking the most? What make you made happy? And what do you feel the proudest of in your life? And who all are the strength? What is anything that is confronting to you? What happened if you get through difficult times in the past? Or what is your source of strength now? Then hope and concerns. Is there anything that hope for you? And is there anything that feels unfinished? So these all questions we can ask. And I'm repeatedly saying that we can establish a rapport very thoroughly with the patient. Then only we should move on with this. Okay. So shall we move to the next slide? Next is the psychosocial assessment, which is sometimes we may neglect to ask to patients. And here some other example questions which I mentioned for your understanding. That do you have any interest in sex? Do you understand the importance of sex in life? Do you find any changes in desire of sex in your life? And do you get an erection? If it is a male patient, we can ask, do you have ejaculation? Before moving into the next things, I would like to say that we should analyze, or we should not take the psychosocial assessment for all patients. When we are doing assessment, if we are getting an assessment like their family relationship is their psychosocial relationship is worsening because of the illness condition or due to any other family issues, then only we are moving with a psychosocial assessment. And it will be helpful for patients like spinal cord injury patients. Normally, after that incident, for some paraplegic patients and all, it is very difficult. Maybe if they are young couple, and after we know after this trauma, they won't able to get the male may not get an erection and ejaculation normally. So their psychosexual things will not satisfy each other. That time we cannot interfere in by asking their psychosocial desires, and family counseling can be arranged. Before that, individually we can assess the patient. If the patient is comfortable with a male social worker or a male person, if the patient is a male, then we can move on like that. Or else, if we are much confident about asking all these questions to the patient, we can go ahead with all these kind of questions. Just have a look into that. Questions, please keep it in your chat box. So do you face any problems of bladder, bowel dysfunction, or flexure spasm, or any other problems during intercourse? Have you noticed any change in sexual relation with your partner in life? Do you find any help in improving sexual functions with rehabilitation? Do you desire for marriage, or do you want divorce or breaking the relationship, because sometimes they may in a dilemma that if they are not satisfying their partner, it may better to divorce because they can lead a better life. So these kind of things may goes in patient's mind. So we can tackle these all through the questions. And moreover, if some professional advices is necessary, we can refer them to the professionals for more treatment and all, once we understand the exact situation. And for these things, we can um, see, we can discuss all these matters. What are the assessments which we are going through? As we know, we are doing it a holistic approach with the help of a multidisciplinary team, and the team members can we can discuss all these. What are the assessments which we are going through, and we can discuss with our team members and get an idea or set the goals as per that. So these are the assessment variables which we usually going through. And again, I want to take your attention for that scenario which we already discussed. So now can you please unmute yourself and can you tell me what are the assessments and what are the interventions you can take for this patient at the first time of visit? Anyone? Please volunteering yourself and tell me how you will going to tackle this females issues. We have go through all the variables what we are exactly dealing with.
You can either unmute yourself or give your answers in chat.
Okay, then I will take you through the interventions which we are dealt with here. On a detailed psychosocial assessment, it was found that Mrs. D is very grieved and she does not have any kind of support. She need assistance for all her activities of daily living. She was unclear about the prognosis. She was worried about the day-by-day life because she couldn't even manage at least the basic needs in her family. She think that could be able to get back her vision after an eye surgery, but there is no one take care of her and to provide financial support for the surgery. As we know, there is if any bystander is there only, like that, our hospital settings are saying, if we have any primary caregivers only, we will proceed with the surgery and other procedures. So there is no one is there for assisting her to take to the hospital. So next one is a relationship with the husband and his family was strained, and she was very hesitant to go out and interact with the people with her foul-smelling wound. Poor housing condition is also one of the reasons for uncared and progressing ulcer. She lives in a very rural area, and the convenience to hospital was very tough. She was worried about her son's education. He was discontinue his schooling and only look after his mother. His social interaction diminished, and lack of proper care leads to suicidal ideations. She was in extreme spiritual distress, and she couldn't understand why she had to suffer so much in spite of being a strong believer of God. So these are the findings which been assessed when this patient was seen at the first time. So What are the psychosocial interventions for this patient is, we provided health education regarding DM management and her prognosis. Then sought the support of an advocate and registered the case at Childline and filed petition at the DCPU, Child Protection Unit, for the son, because the father is completely abandoned the child and nobody is there to take care of his basic needs. Informed the local authority and with the help of a community volunteer, we arranged a 3-time meals at a hotel nearby to her home, assisted her to avail a disability certificate, sought the help of social media, and inquired mother financial assistance for her, coordinated with the Taluk Legal Service Corporation, and they provided a ration card within a week, applied in Panchayat to get her a shelter facility via Taluk Legal Service Corporation. Meanwhile, provided a temporary home for her and the expenses was managed by ANGA and Palim India. We have arranged a physiatrist consultation and provided a walker wheelchair as per their advice. We provided glucometer, normal chair, a cot, and a mattress, which is very urgent for that patient to improve her DM. Facilitate and support provided for eye consultation and management. The healthcare team monitored her DM regularly and regulated it before her eye surgery. Continue wound care recovery and management. Apply for governmental ration support and disability pension. Assisted her to obtain Chief Minister Relief Fund and she received the beneficial support. Psychotherapy and supportive care has been provided to son also. And her son was introduced to the children's group and he took part in summer camp provided. Then likewise his social interaction was improved because at most he is every time only seeing his mother's face and they are isolated so long. Then provided educational and financial support to son and provided a mentor who can monitor his education progress. Contacted her husband and started family counseling. Later, after these all sessions, the husband decided to live with the family. Diabetic wound management was done with the help of an expertise private diabetic care hospital in Trivandrum. Provided a refrigerator to store her insulin and diet charted food. Provided financial help to travel from hospital to home and other needs. Planning to empower Mrs. T with a sustainable income, which is a long-term goal, and we are already rehabilitating the patient, and this is a long-term goal that once her wound get healed, we will empower her through any kind of vocational rehabilitation as per her interest. So these are the psychosocial interventions which we has gone through with this patient. So why I taken all through this case scenario, because almost all aspects, almost all social factors which we covered through how we can give a psychosocial support, almost all areas we have covered. That's why I took you all through this kind of story. So some other general interventions or the normal interventions involve the family meeting, supportive counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy based communications, facilitating psychoeducational support groups, recommendation for governmental schemes, and other financial assistance. That may be a crowdfunding, or we can approach the government or any kind of NGO or any kind of sponsorship. We can add, we can seek help of social media. We can have, we can do the fundraising. Then linking with the community resources, vocational training. That may involve how the patient is. First of all, we have to identify what kind of vocational training is possible for that patient. Maybe if the patient having a limited mobility, we cannot do much with the, we cannot teach them to do something, some electrical works or something like that. But they can specifically do some works such as candle making, umbrella making, and some embroidery works and all. So based on their interest and the possibility of training or possibility of that outcome, also we need to understand. Then only we can provide a vocational training. Then regular follow-up with regular intervals. Sometimes it depends. So as we told, the psychosocial needs of a patient may vary over the course of illness. So the follow-up should ask based on the priority and the need basis. So these are the general interventions which we usually used. And the other thing I want to take your attention is the dignity. We should see dignity therapy, which is a scientific based study by Dr. Harvey Max, and this is a inability to acknowledge a personhood. The insensitivity of not acknowledging personhood can be psychologically devastating. And very important, we have to respect the person. And I know in our curriculum, we are taught to treat the patient, and we are taking all the procedures once if we get their concerns only, maybe either by family members or the person concerned only. So in the same way, the dignity when the communicating with any kind of bad news or any kind of even our suggestions, oh, you can do like this, your life would be somewhat better. So these kind of things should be we can communicate them once understood about what exactly the patients want, really what they are feeling about their someone. Sometimes they want independent. Most of the patients want to be independent. So those all things we need to address. Then only we have to do something with something about their dignity, and we can conserve the dignity care through our attitude, our behavior, and our compassion and the dialogue which we deliver to the patient. So it's an ABCD of dignity conserving care. And another important point, we always decline that the caregiver, such as respect those individuals and acknowledge their complex role. They never dehumanize them by calling a bystander a come bystander, or usually we are doing it in our hospital settings. Who is a bystander of this patient? We generally asking these kind of questions. So address them with their name, and otherwise we can address them by the patient's name. So the caregivers is also having lot of burden, and maybe they may not take the patient as a burden, but they are once their breadwinner or that patient itself is a breadwinner, suddenly getting into sick. The primary caregiver is mostly women are the primary caregivers most of the time, and they have to take care of all the things in the family, which is a completely a new thing in their life. So caregiver is also one of the important factor in the life. So we should acknowledge their problems. We should also take care of their well-being. What are their primary concerns, and what are their worries, and what are their thoughts about their future life, and about the family, about the kids. All these also need to be addressed. So we can just for your understanding, we can go to a video which shows how the caregivers are taking care.
Today, we see around us many bedridden patients who have lost hope for a better life. Abandoned by conventional medicine systems, they live their lives dependent on the care of their near and dear ones. Globally, 80% of this care is provided by women. Often, women caregivers neglect their own health and well-being in the care of others. Families also fall into extreme poverty because of the illness of the main income earner, the male. Dependent women are left without any means to survive. The Pallium India Trust recognized this crucial need for women caregivers to be supported. With the financial help of the Women's Wing of the Federation of Malayali Associations of America, Pallium India Trust is extending a helping hand to one of the most neglected sections in society, women caregivers. Shaila has faced misfortune upon misfortune. While her husband was stricken by cerebral vascular accident, she lost her 22-year-old son in a motorbike accident. Despite these debilitating events, Shaila faces life with unusual courage. Once again, Pallium India reached out and is supporting Shaila to rebuild her life.
ഇന്ത്യയിൽ അവരെല്ലാവരും ടീമംഗങ്ങൾ എല്ലാവരും എനിക്ക് ഭയങ്കര സപ്പോർട്ടീവാണ്. ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഞാൻ ഇന്ന് അങ്ങോട്ട് മുന്നോട്ട് പോണത് തന്നെ എനിക്ക് അവരെ സപ്പോർട്ടുള്ളത് കൊണ്ടാണ്. എല്ലാ രീതിയിലും എല്ലാവരും ഭയങ്കര ഇതാണ്. എല്ലാവരും എൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്, ഏത് സമയത്ത് എന്തൊരു ഇത് വന്നാലും ഒരു കോള് ചെയ്താൽ മതി, അപ്പം അവരെത്തുമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്. അത് തന്നെയാണ് എൻ്റെ ജീവിതത്തിലെ വിഷയം.
Vijay Kumar and Vijay Kumari are siblings affected by an autoimmune disease. Now, at 34 and 36 years, their only caregivers are their elderly parents. While Pallium India provides them with home care facilities, which takes care of their medical needs, their elderly mother needed an extra income to support the family. ₹30,000 was given to Jainamma. She continues caring for the children from home. Rashmi has another story to tell. Her husband, Biju, is confined to a wheelchair after a spinal injury. Rashmi set up a small garment business with which she managed to run the household. But the huge costs of the medical treatment for Biju and subsequent deaths forced her to stop the business. Through FOMA, she was given a grant of ₹30,000. With this, Rashmi was able to restart her small garment business.
Reshma, your voice is not coming through.
Oh, sorry. So, so we can approach various projects and programs, and through crowdfunding, or we can do a better services by respect them, acknowledge them, and we have to be with them through their illness related suffering. See this slide. So this is an important question. What do I need to know about you to help you better? So maybe someone is waiting for someone who are asking this kind of questions. What do I need to know about you to help you better? And amazingly, we may get extra ordinary answers from the patients, which we can do as much as for their. Maybe it is a little thing. If somebody is standing outside, they may know, oh, this is a somewhat small thing. Maybe it is birthday celebration of their family member, or they want to ride in a motorcycle, or they want to see a mountain, or whatever it may be. So these things may help them to understand about them, satisfying their life. So we can acknowledge them like this. As a social worker or a palliative care profession, so our intervention is basically to collect that information, and we can be a listener to the family and patient or the healthcare settings, and we have to do regular follow and should provide psychoeducation and facilitation of referrals, or government approaches, government schemes, counseling, supportive counseling, rehabilitation, bereavement support to the family. So these all are the general interventions we can do. And always remember, evaluate our interventions, and evaluate at least twice or thrice in a regular period of time, and assess how the patient and families benefited with our interventions. Assessment have to be revised and updated. Good documentation is invaluable, and wherever possible, use research validated techniques and tools to assess the socioeconomic status, or some mental status examination techniques, CBT, everywhere. There is an art and science in psychosocial care, just as in the medicine, which will provide a valuable result for the patient, and it will be very beneficial for the family members and the patient. So we have to take care of all these through in a art of like an art. So that's it. And there may be a doubt for you that in a busy schedule or a busy hospital settings, in your usual settings, how you can tackle all these things very quickly. So just frame your questions or these assessments criteria, just frame it is in a form of a questionnaire, and you can take the initial assessments there itself. Most of the things is already been there in your the patient's case record, and you can take the informations from there also. Then further you can do the psychosocial sessions and assessments as per the need basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Reshma, for the presentation. So if you have any doubts, please ask. You can unmute yourself and talk, or you can chat through your questions. Anybody?
Any pressing issues are there at the discussion?
Sister Regina, can you unmute and speak?
Sister Regina.
Okay, so hello.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so please, I wanted to ask. I'm not sure whether I heard it clearly, but then I was wondering whether our patient D was given access to an eye care or something since she started having a blurry vision and she wasn't able to see well. I was thinking that maybe we could, as part of her management, she could be made to see an ophthalmologist, someone who would help her with the eye, so that at least they can
Your voice is breaking. We cannot.
Sister Regina.
Regina, can you put it in the chat box because we couldn't able to get you.
Hello.
We can hear you now. Your voice was breaking. So can you repeat
Oh,
it?
okay, sorry. Yes, please. Please, I was asking whether patient D was given an eye care since she was having blurry vision at some point. I want to know whether she was given that care, and if not, could it be included in her management, like giving her the opportunity to see an ophthalmologist who could at least assess the extent of damage and then maybe help and comfort.
Yes, Regina, we are already included in that also. Dealing with the diabetic management, somewhat she is okay with the her blood vision, and we have take a referral to the eye hospital in Trivandrum, and she had done with the cataract surgery for her left eye, and thereafter and now planning she was continued with her medication, and it is very good to say that she is now able to see her son, so that is also included in the care.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sister Regina. So we have Smriti Rana here. She is the Director of Programs with Pallium India, and she also looks into the National Outreach Program and all the entire social worker networks and so. So Smriti ma'am, do you have anything to add in about what Reshma have just presented? You're muted, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Raju. And thanks, Reshma, for a very comprehensive presentation. I think that there was a lot of points that you covered. I just want to mention a few things, just building on what Reshma has already stated, that we wonder why that we're talking about psychosocial care when we're talking to a group of nurses or a group of doctors when we do the foundation program for palliative medicine or palliative nursing. And that's because in palliative care, as you know by now, that it's a very holistic approach. And today you heard the term total care, which basically means that a person's suffering is influenced by all the domains of their lives. So it's important for us to look into all of it. And when we talk about an interdisciplinary team, we also ask the question, who is the most important person on the team? And the answers to that are quite varied. Sometimes you hear doctors, sometimes you hear nurse, sometimes you hear different people. The answer really is whoever can help the person at that time in the most appropriate way. And just like humans exist in a psychosocial context, so we can never separate their illness from the psychosocial context in which they exist. So even if we want to provide quality care to our patients, then we need to understand the context or their story. And when you look at a genogram, it seems like a very simple diagram of just drawing circles and squares and connecting them with lines of different types. But what a genogram really does is it gives us, like Reshma said, a snapshot It gives us a snapshot of the family. And where the lines define the structure, it also tells us the dynamics. Who talks to whom in the family? Who makes the decisions in the family? Very often, and as you saw, she said that the primary caregiver is often the woman. And I want to ask you all this question: how often is the woman, and in a lot of cases, it's the daughter-in-law in the family, how often is she the decision maker? So when you communicate with the primary caregiver, it's very important to realize that she may or may not, or he may or may not be the person who's making the decisions. And therefore, it's, sometimes we're frustrated that the family is not receiving the treatment plan or whatever. It's because we might be talking to the wrong person at that point. So the genogram really tells us who it is that we should be talking to. We see this very often, that one family member might be in a country abroad, like Dubai, somewhere in the Middle East. They're the earning member. And what we have found over and over again is that whoever controls the finances is the person who controls the decisions. So these are things for us, that's why the genogram becomes important. And the eco map that Reshma took us through, the eco map as well as the spiritual assessment, not only are they ways for us to get to know the patient and the family better, it is also for us to understand and identify where their strength comes from. So that's one part. Where does their strength come from? And it also helps us to reframe for them things that are not directly associated with the illness. I'm sure you all know that when a person gets diagnosed with a disease, then everything becomes about the disease. So asking questions like what was outlined in the spiritual assessment, asking questions about who in your community supports you. These are ways to also help the person remember these sources of strength still exist for them. These sources of meaning still exist for them. So there are several layers there are several ways in which these assessments serve. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that, the two things I wanted to mention. One is a psychosexual assessment. I wonder how many of you felt uncomfortable going through that list of questions. How many of you have asked a man whether he's still able to sustain an erection? It's a very blunt question. How many of you are comfortable asking a woman how her intimate life is at this point? Never. I can see the answers, never. But these are, and of course, the question here is who should ask these questions? And at what point in the relationship with our patients and families should we be allowed to ask these questions? So while these are assessment techniques that we're laying out, by no means are we saying that they're easy to carry out, but it's something that we should aspire to. So a young social worker, for instance, who is unmarried, probably may not be the right person to go and have this conversation with a slightly older couple. And especially in our culture, that's not something that is even appreciated, right? So we have to find people within the team. It may not be the social worker. It might be an older nurse or a doctor who possibly can have this conversation separately with the wife or separately with the husband. So while these assessment techniques have been put out there, I know that it's not a comfortable thing for anybody. And at this point, I'm going to also ask you to examine where your personal comfort boundaries are. If you are not comfortable asking a question or exploring a particular aspect of somebody's life, then perhaps it should be handed over to somebody who is more comfortable, who is more experienced, who possibly has been using those communication skills for a while. But I will also say that it's only with practice that we get better at these very uncomfortable points in assessing our patients and their families. And finally, I'm very glad that Reshma talked about dignity, because dignity is outlined in our constitution, in our country, especially the right to dignity. And if I were to ask you, where does your dignity lie? What defines your dignity? I think there are 50 people present, in 50 participants that I can see in the Zoom call. I think I will get 50 different answers. So that question that Reshma put, what can I do? What do I need to know about you that can help me help you best? That is the dignity question. And that is something we can always start that conversation with there. And the word bystander that Reshma touched upon, I think is a very important word. It's been put into our dictionaries, our medical dictionaries for a very long time. But a bystander by definition is someone who stands by and doesn't do anything. And that is the absolute opposite description of the caregiver, because the caregiver does everything. So it is my humble request that you remove the word bystander from your vocabularies as well. And because dignity is deeply tied to the usage of certain words that we sometimes very thoughtlessly use. So that's my input for today. Thank you, Reshma, again for a very comprehensive presentation. And if there are any questions that later need my input, I'm happy to give it in, but I think Reshma is the expert on the field, so I'll leave it to her.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Smriti. So we can move on to the patient story. Sister Shirley Karata will be presenting the patient story today. Sister Shirley, over to you.
Hello.
Yes, sister, we can hear you. Yes, sister, we can hear you. You can start your presentation.
Yeah, good afternoon all. I am Sister Shirley from Chennai. I am working Jivodia Hospice for Cancer Hospice. I am very long time in Germany. Then my English very poor. English and German is mixed. Sorry for that. Okay. We started. I am presenting the case of the patient with a clear rectum. She is 69 years old lady. Madam, can hear?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. You can.
Okay, madam. Presenting complaints, pain in ulcer around the colostomy site, pain score number 7, sleeplessness, watery stool. History of illness. My patient had fever, vomiting, constipation, and she was very weak. She went to hospital where she was suggested a CT scan, followed by a biopsy, and got diagnosed as a clear rectum. Colonoscopy done. Patient was not ready for any curative treatment like surgery or radiotherapy or chemotherapy. So only colostomy was done. On examination, if was found that is very severe pain, ulcer formed around the colostomy site, reddish ulcer without any raised margins, ulcer is clean and non-infected. Insomnia, she got watery stools, psychosocial issues, all other vitals normal. Treatment and significant investigations. We started with TAP, morphine 10 mg 4th hourly. That increased up to 50 mg 4th hourly. Dressing with the normal saline and metronidazole powder 3 times a day. Medication for sleeplessness and watery stools. Psychosocial asset. Patient feels depressed because she is away from family. No cooperative with the roommates, sometimes staffs only. Also, she is in hospice for a long time. That's why sometimes she dominates other roommates. Very sensitive towards other people. Medication followed for the patient. Tab morphine 50 mg 4th hourly. Tab loperamide 2 mg DDS. Tab pantoprazole 40 mg BD. Tab lorazepam 2 mg 1 HS. Multivitamin OD. Tab paracetamol 1000 mg TDS. Tab aceclofenac 100 mg BD. Main concern for the patient. She worried about the wound. None of relatives are visiting. She feels abundantly by family. How long I will have the suffer like this? Hesitation to use colostomy bag because of wrong information she got. Patient diagnosed with the clear rectum is here in hospice for about 7 years. She has not undertaken any curative treatment and only got her colostomy done, not using colostomy bag for past few years due to wrong information, because of which she got ulcer around the colostomy site. Her pain elevates with the opioid analgesics. Rarely her relatives visit, which is causing her to feel abandoned. She keeps herself neatly. Almost all the time she is present. Sometimes she got into depression. She is of a dominating nature. She is very religious and praying so many times. She is coping up with medication and also psychological and spiritual support given. Discussion points. How can we control the pain still better? Second, how to improve the wound care in a modern method. Third, she is not interested in using colostomy bag. How can we make her understand the need for using colostomy bag? Or what are the other options instead of colostomy bag in case if patient denies to use it? Fifth, how can we handle her psychological issues? Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Sister Shirley, for the excellent presentation. So we have no time for discussing the detail today. We have a session on colostomy. The next maybe after 2 weeks. So that time we will discuss about the colostomy issues. I know this patient is having colostomy and having lot of physical issues, pain and escoration of skin, diarrhea and all. So we will discuss it later, and we can discuss today about the psychosocial issues. This patient is having lot of psychosocial issues. This patient is going to depression. So I think we can discuss about this today. And okay.
So the first point you are mentioning, like patients feel depressed because she is away from family. So why she is away from family? So do you know any idea? Because you already mentioned that she has been there since 7 years, right?
Yes.
So
7 years.
what is the real matter behind that? Whether she is abandoned from the family members or she's an orphan? What kind of background is she is having?
And after the diagnosis, after the diagnosis,
Sister Shirley,
yes,
you can talk it in Malayalam.
If you feel any difficulties, you can talk in Malayalam.
okay, madam, thank you.
Okay.
After diagnosis, see, my patient വീട്ടിൽ നിൽക്കാൻ ഇഷ്ടമില്ല.
Okay. Okay.
അങ്ങനെ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു ഓൾഡ് ഏജ് ഹോം കണ്ടുപിടിക്കുന്നു വെച്ചു. അങ്ങനെ ഇഷ്ടമായിട്ട് ഇങ്ങോട്ട് വന്നതാണ്.
Okay, she don't want to continue in her home after the diagnosis of the condition, and the decision is taken by herself that she want to be in a hospice after being diagnosed. So that's what, right? We understood.
Yeah, thank you.
So are you able to identify whether she's having any kind of issues in relation with the means she's away from the family, so any problems relating to that, because it's always 7 years long. So do you ask for any kind of wishes that could be help to avoid her emotional feelings and all? If anybody is, that is the point number one. And one more thing I want to add, if anybody is there in your hospice setting to communicate and communicate better, or she's having any positive support which is providing from your side, maybe any inmates of your hospice, or any professionals there.
Yes, madam. Hello.
പറഞ്ഞോളൂ.
Yes, madam. If one month before, we are daily given the counseling but ഒരു മാസം മുന്നേ ഒരു നല്ലൊരു ഡോക്ടർ ഇവിടെ വന്നു. ആ ഡോക്ടർ വന്ന് ഇങ്ങനെ എല്ലാ ദിവസവും ഇങ്ങനെ കൗൺസിലിങ്ങും വിത്ത് ടോക്ക് വിത്ത് ഈ പേഷ്യന്റ്. ഇപ്പൊ പേഷ്യന്റ് നോൺ അഡ്ഹസീവ് കൊളോസ്റ്റമി ബാഗ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പൊ അതിന്റെ വൂണ്ട് എല്ലാം പോയി. ഇപ്പൊ വെരി ഹാപ്പി. സി ഓൾവേസ് നോ പെയിൻ, നോ ഡിപ്രഷൻ, വെരി ഹാപ്പി. Then she just working so much plastic bag. ഈ തമിഴ്നാട്ടിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്ന ഒരു പ്ലാസ്റ്റിക് ബാഗ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ, അത് എല്ലാ നേരം ഇങ്ങനെ ഉണ്ടാക്കി വളരെ ഹാപ്പി ആയിട്ട് ഇപ്പൊ ഒരു 1 month ആയിട്ട് വളരെ ഹാപ്പി ആയിട്ട് പോകുന്നുണ്ട്.
So she's taking a different task, like doing some activities in there, right?
Yes, madam.
So you can also continue like that. You can approach various methods and just understand what her interest in that. Sometimes if she is continue with the same for a long time, she may feel some not, maybe she may develop not interested with that. So always observe the patient.
Yes, madam.
You have
Yes,
to
madam.
communicate her regularly. Maybe 1 or 2 person who can approach her daily. So maintain an interpersonal relationship with that patient. Then only she is also feeling a little comfort about the person who is talking with her. So she is also going to develop a kind of trust between yourself also.
Okay, madam. Somebody told her that if you do continuously this bag use, then itching and redness and ulcer അതെല്ലാം വരുന്ന ആരോ പറഞ്ഞു കൊടുത്തു. അങ്ങനെ പേടിച്ചിട്ടാണ് അത് ചെയ്യാതിരുന്നത്. She is not bedridden. She is walking with a very normally woman.
So, sister, how can that take that bowel movement? Anyway, if there is a colostomy there, when the bowel is moved, the feces will come out, no? So,
Yes,
how
yes.
can they collect the fecal feces?
Madam, I deserve ജീവോദയ ഹോസ്പിറ്റലിലേക്ക് വന്നിട്ട് 3 month ആയി. ജൂലൈയിൽ വന്നതാണ്. ഞാനത് കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചപ്പോ തൊട്ട് അതിന് മുന്നേ ചെയ്തിരുന്നത് പേഷ്യന്റിന് എപ്പോഴും വാസ്ലിൻ കോസ് ചുറ്റും വെച്ച് അതിന്റെ മേലെ നമ്മൾ എപ്പോഴും പാഡ് വെക്കും.
Okay.
പാഡ് വെച്ചിട്ട് തുണി കൊണ്ട് അടച്ചു വെച്ചിരുന്ന പേഷ്യന്റ് ഡെയിലി അത് 5-10 പ്രാവശ്യം മാറ്റി എടുക്കാണ് ചെയ്തിരുന്നത്. അപ്പോഴും അങ്ങനെ പേഷ്യന്റിന് നമ്മൾ പിന്നെ കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചതിന് ശേഷം ഇങ്ങനെ ഒട്ടാത്ത ഒരു തരം കൊളോസ്റ്റമി ബാഗ് കിട്ടും, നോൺ അഡ്ഹെസീവ്. അതിപ്പോ വെച്ച് അതെങ്ങനെ വെക്കുന്ന വെച്ചാൽ നമ്മൾ വാസ്ലിൻ കോസ് ചുറ്റും വെച്ച് ഈ പാഡ് വെച്ചിട്ട് അതിന്റെ മേലെ ഇത് വെച്ച് നമ്മൾ ഒരു ബെൽറ്റ് കൊണ്ട് ഫിറ്റ് ചെയ്യണം, തുണികൾ ചുറ്റും വെച്ച് പേടിക്കണം. ഇപ്പൊ നമ്മുടെ ബോണ്ട് എല്ലാം ചെറുതായി വളരെ നോർമൽ കൊളോസ്റ്റമിയുടെ വലിപ്പമായി. അതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ പിന്നെ പേഷ്യന്റിന് ഞങ്ങള് എന്നോട് പറഞ്ഞു പേഷ്യന്റ് ഡ്രസ്സ് ചെയ്യാൻ പാടില്ല, പേഷ്യന്റ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ വളരെ ഇങ്ങനെ സ്റ്റിഫായിട്ടും ഭയങ്കര ടൈറ്റ് ആയിട്ട് വലിച്ചു ഇങ്ങനെ ഡ്രസ്സൊക്കെ ചെയ്തിരുന്നു. ഇപ്പൊ നമ്മള് സിസ്റ്റേഴ്സ് ഡെയിലി 3 ടൈം 3 പ്രാവശ്യം ബാഗ് മാറ്റി നമ്മളാണ് ഡ്രസ്സ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ അങ്ങനെ കണ്ടിന്യൂസ് അപ്പൊ പേഷ്യന്റ് വളരെ ഹാപ്പിയായി, പേഷ്യന്റിന് സന്തോഷമായി. ഇപ്പൊ ഇങ്ങനെ മറ്റുള്ളവരായിട്ട് വഴക്ക അങ്ങനത്തെ കാര്യങ്ങളൊന്നും ഇല്ല.
Okay, now she is
very happy.
Sister Shirley, now she is using the colostomy bag, right?
Colostomy bag, yeah. Yes, madam.
Oh, okay. What Sister Shirley was sharing with us is before the patient had when the bowel was moved, the patient was collected the feces with the help of that Gamgee pad like cotton pieces. So once they reached the hospice, the Sister Shirley and team were taking care very well, and now she is able to they use colostomy bag.
Colostomy bag. Yes.
So I think when if you are not properly use the colostomy bag when the bowel is moved, that if there is a diarrhea there is a chance of excoriation of skin is also there. If there is a excoriation there, they're not able to fix the bag appropriately. So again, their pain will be there, itching will be there. There are a lot of problems. So if possible, you can try to, if there is a excoriation of the skin there, you can apply Karaya powder. Like we will, Karaya powder is available. So once you can take a Karaya powder and mix with a white egg part, and you can spread over the excoriation of skin part. So there is a barrier between the skin and the colostomy bag. So that what help is if there is a barrier between the excoriation of skin and bag, so that help to heal the Karaya powder is also is a protein content, so that will help to heal the excoriation of skin very well. If the Karaya powder is not available, you can apply zinc oxide. Okay, that is the two method we can use it in the excoriation of skin. So okay, we will discuss detailed in later. So
we have very shortage of time.
So Smriti, are you there? No. Okay. Okay. So we will stop it here. We are nurses. We are not get adequate time for the psychosocial assessment. So if our busy schedule, we need to understand is, so if there is a psychosocial and spiritual problems are there, that the physical problems will be increasing. So, and the next thing is, if there is a one patient in their family, that whole family will be affecting. So these are the two important messages you have to keep in mind while communicate the patient. If you identify any psychosocial and spiritual issues are there, you can try to include the psychosocial workers or the psychologist for this patient, and you can explore their problems. You can imagine if there is any problem there, you can just share your your distress with your friends or relatives. You will feel more relaxed. You will get more that mental relaxation. So that is why if you face these type of problems in the patients, so you can try to include the psychosocial workers. So that will improve that. If once you explain the patient's problems, That's the way to improve the quality of the life of the patient and their family. So you never ignore the dignity. We should respect the patient and their family members. Each person, you have to respect their words, and we have to listen their problems. So thank you, Reshma, for the excellent presentation, and thank you, Smriti, for the important points to add on. And Sister Shirley, thank you once again for the excellent presentation, and thank you all.
Thank you all.